and welcome to Tuesday Newsday, your #1 resource for the entire week's worth of VR news. So, I was working on an entirely different video all about VR lenses and how ridiculously cool they are, but I actually stopped right in the middle of it to make this one. Because, well, something kinda huge happened. Google has finally announced its big comeback to VR with AndroidXR, and I think this is gonna have some massive repercussions throughout the entire VR industry. So we'll talk all about that, but that's not it. Quest, Vision Pro, PSVR2 all have some pretty exciting end-of-the-year updates, and I've got a little opinion piece on Valve's new headset at the end. We got a lot to cover, but first, before I get too deep in today's topics, I'm gonna make this one short and sweet. If you don't already have a VPN, it's a great tool to have, and after using NordVPN and reading their privacy policy for myself, I'm happy to have them as a sponsor of this video. Over my time using Nord, it's been fast, I've had no issues, it's worked on all of my devices, and I recently discovered that you can watch basically all the content ever made by the BBC using the BBC iPlayer website as long as you're accessing the internet through the UK, which you can do with 2 clicks with NordVPN. I've always been a bit weird about taking VPN sponsors on this channel. This is the first I've ever done, but after reading through the privacy policy myself, Nord has a distinct no logs policy. They will not monitor, track, record, or sell any of its users' internet activity. And right now, NordVPN is still doing a massive Black Friday sale, and you can unlock that deal using my discount link, nordvpn.com/Thrillseeker. It's legit one of the best deals on a VPN you can find on the internet, as they're also giving away 4 months free if you use the link. Again, that's nordvpn.com/Thrillseeker. At the end of the day, a VPN is a good thing to have, and NordVPN is a good VPN. So thanks to Nord, but now let's just get right into the news. All right, so first I figured we'd start with the Vision Pro. When it launched almost a year ago, and yeah, time flies, the most controversial part of the launch, besides the price of course, was the fact that it didn't include or even support tracked controllers. This, however, is seemingly all about to change. According to Mark Gurman, Apple and Sony have been working together to finally bring the PSVR2's controller as a natively supported peripheral for the Vision Pro. And while I do not think this will sell any more Vision Pros, at least not a huge amount, I'm personally really excited, as Vision Pro developers will actually have the right tools to develop virtual reality applications with, and it just opens up more ways to actually use the headset. It just makes it more valuable. And this announcement was expected to come this week actually from Apple, but apparently it was delayed at the very last minute. Gurman says that the controller support is ready to go right now, it's just a matter of time until it releases, unless for some crazy reason it gets scrapped at the last minute, which I really hope it doesn't. Over the past week, Vision Pro has also gotten some other pretty nice updates with Vision OS 2.2, the main one being an ultra-wide mode for its virtual monitor, which looks fantastic. I've been using it all over the place recently, and yeah, it works great. And hilariously, with Apple supposedly adding Sony's controllers to their headset, Sony has seemingly gotten on the train to add hand tracking to the PSVR2. This was shown at demos just this past week at SIGGRAPH Asia, and from the couple people I know that tried it, apparently the hand tracking on PSVR2 is really great. And look, you guys already know I'm a huge fan of hand tracking. I like building for it, I like when it's used right, and so it's just really great to see it actually coming to a headset that I didn't expect. Sony says that hand tracking is already included in the PlayStation's SDK, so we might end up seeing hand tracking apps on PSVR2 and in the store before we know it. I still just find it pretty funny that Apple goes to Sony to finally get controllers, and around the same time, Sony finally gets hand tracking, but I guess everyone wins. And real quick, before we get to AndroidXR, Quest 3 and 3S both get a nice end-of-year update with V72, with a new and improved hand tracking model 2.3, showing a litany of improvements from latency to pinch stabilization to just overall higher stability. Also in V72 is a universal keyboard cutout system, which is really cool to see. Basically, if the headset sees a keyboard, it doesn't even have to be connected, it'll create a little pass-through tunnel over the keyboard, which is pretty cool, unless you're like me and have a keyboard obsession and have keyboards lying around all over the place. Although, I think the biggest new feature coming to Quest is one of my favorites from Vision Pro. On the Vision Pro, you're able to basically look at any MacBook or Mac while using the headset and create a virtual monitor within your shared space. And this is now a feature feature with Quest 3 and 3S with Windows 11. The only downside of this is that it still requires a local internet connection. The Vision Pro's version of this feature essentially creates a brand new Wi-Fi network between the laptop or computer and the headset, meaning you can use the virtual monitor feature anywhere even if you don't have internet, versus Meta's option, at least right now, requires you to be on the same network as the computer. It just, uses your Wi-Fi. But still, in general, this is a really great feature and I'm glad it's here. I'll be using it a lot. But now that we're all caught up to speed on basically everything from the past month, besides some leaked Deckard controllers, let's finally talk about this bombshell that Google dropped. After years of speculation, rumors, and a couple false starts, Google finally showed their hand, announcing AndroidXR, a dedicated branch of Android built for all sorts of devices, with the first AndroidXR headset set to drop sometime next year, which we'll get to in a second. First, I want to just take a minute to really talk about what an official AndroidXR really means for the entire industry. Because while I don't think it'll be a huge deal immediately, it will be in the coming years. That is, if Google can keep their heads on straight and not pull a Stadia. How important this announcement is very much so reliant on how much Google is willing to play the long game with it. But I think the best way to start this out is to give you just a little bit of background so we're all on the same page. VR headsets have already been using Android for 7 or 8 years now. It's kind of the standard operating system for standalone VR anything. From Google Cardboard to the Oculus Go, all the way to the modern Quest 3, besides the Apple Vision Pro, everything uses Android. However, it's never really been official. Android, by its nature, is an open source operating system, meaning you can take it and kind of do whatever you want with it, which is exactly what companies like Meta have done with the Quest with their own Horizon OS. This is also what Pico and HTC and basically anybody that's made a standalone VR headset has done, and what we've ended up with is this fractured hardware landscape where there's like 10 different headsets that all use their own proprietary version of Android. And this is exactly where AndroidXR is kind of a big deal for everyone. With an official AndroidXR branch, manufacturers no longer need to hack together a VR OS. Google is just offering a fully supported branch with all of these extra features baked in. It's a win for manufacturers, developers, and consumers. It's kind of good for everybody. And that also doesn't mean that manufacturers can't build on top of AndroidXR, kind of how manufacturers do for smartphone Android. But I also have to say, for the biggest player in the room, there's no way I can't not read this as a giant knife in Meta's back. It's kind of a foil to their current plans that they've announced. And so let me just tangent for a moment. There are two things that I find hilarious with this whole AndroidXR situation. The first one is an Android's official AndroidXR announcement, when they say,
"Alone you can go fast, but together you can go far.
And the only way we'll get there is if we build this together."
Meanwhile, Google has blatantly refused to work with anyone else unless it's on their terms and turf. I mean, at least if Andrew Bosworth, Meta's CTO, is telling the truth, Meta has tried multiple times to get the Play Store on Quest, something that would be massive for the entire ecosystem. It just makes sense. But Google has refused, or at least has refused Meta's terms. And on top of that, all of Google's existing XR apps, including the basic ones like YouTube, were purposely withheld from Vision Pro. So yeah, seems like teamwork is really great as long as you're on Google's team. But then again, I can't even blame them. Meta's over here just slapping a Horizon OS sticker over Android. Meanwhile, Android is like, no, Android is the Android of XR. Thank you very much. And I actually find it a bit cold that after 7 years and millions of users that are currently using some version of Android in VR through Meta, Google and AndroidXR doesn't even give them a mention. Like, they just blatantly ignore them. And you know what? After how absolutely bloody the past decade of VR has been, I don't even know if I could blame them. The entire space is legit a land grab right now, and it's not exactly like Meta's played fair either. But I gotta say, as valuable as Meta's current massively dominant market share is, I personally think that Google has something significantly more valuable, at least long term. For devices that are going to be using AndroidXR, you not only get the full Play Store, but you also get native Android and Google interactions. And I don't think that's just a big deal, it's like kind of Meta's worst nightmare. Think about it. Billions of people already live in Google's ecosystem. Android phones, Gmail, Nest Hubs, YouTube, you name it. Meanwhile, Meta's entire presence is contained within just a few applications. And to further this point, I don't think I know a single person in my physical life that doesn't have a Gmail account. On the flip side, there is not a single person that I have bought a headset for or helped set up VR that hasn't complained about needing a Meta or Facebook account just to start playing. Overall, this whole move, as long as Google sticks with it, is going to have some pretty massive ramifications for the entire VR space. And it's kind of an open playing field as to what exactly is going to happen. And again, I don't predict anything big is going to happen immediately. Remember, AndroidXR right now, currently, as of this video, has a market share of 0. So let's not get too ahead of ourselves. But if Google is serious and they actually stick with it and they show the kind of commitment to AR and VR development that both Apple and Meta have, then this will be a massive deal. And the end result will be a climate that is significantly more pro-consumer. But let's talk about the devices for Android XR real quick, because we know just a little bit about it. Samsung, Sony, and Lynx, if you remember Stan LaRoque and the R1, are all building Android XR headsets with launches starting in 2025. Samsung's prototype, which looks exactly like a Quest Pro matched with a Vision Pro, currently packs a Snapdragon XR2 Plus Gen 2 chip that clocks at roughly 20% faster CPU and 15% faster GPU than the Quest 3, and we're expecting micro OLED displays with pancake lenses, of course. And I predict that this headset, at least from Samsung, is going to be in the higher price range, so I wouldn't plan on it being some budget headset. It's not really a Quest competitor, it's more of a Vision Pro competitor, which I also find pretty interesting because Meta is still working apparently with Asus and Lenovo on some sort of Horizon OS VR headset of their own. So, like I said, we have some very interesting things going on. And here's the thing, while Meta, Google, and even Apple are busy duking it out over the XR land grab, I think Valve is quietly sitting on something absolutely genius. And we've talked about Valve's next headset codenamed Deckard for legitimately years now, and with recent leaks, including what seems to be Deckard's controllers, everything is pointing to roughly a 2025 reveal. And in the context of everything that we talked about today, I want to wrap this one up and wrap the year up with an opinion piece, because I think Valve is really onto something big, at least if my mind's going in the right direction. Unconventional, absolutely, but big. The leaked controllers alone tell us a lot. They ditch the beloved index design and go with the traditional button layout that's on every regular controller. D-pad on the left, ABXY on the right. And to me, that says a couple things. One, I do believe this is a superior design for VR. Splitting and mirroring buttons across two controllers that you can't actually see because you're wearing a headset has been a mess since day one. At least with the D-pad on one hand and 4 buttons on the other hand, you don't have to look at the controllers to know what you're pressing. And 2, these controllers are one-to-one mappable with traditional gamepads. And I don't think that's just a design choice for VR. It's evidence that Valve isn't building a pure VR headset to compete with Meta or Apple. Instead, Deckard is shaping up to be a true hybrid device, part standalone VR headset and part flat-screen gaming machine. Basically what you'd get if you merged a Valve Index with a Steam Deck. And if you ask me, that's absolutely brilliant, especially given the current climate of gaming. If you look at what the Steam Deck did for PC gaming, it completely changed the landscape. Developers are now actively optimizing their games to be Steam Deck compatible, something I never thought I'd see in the PC landscape. But the whole idea of Steam Deck was a true gamble by Valve and its developers that followed it, and it's all paid off. And I think Valve can do the exact same thing for VR. And here's my thesis. VR doesn't always have to be about these crazy fully immersive games like Boneworks or Half-Life Alyx. Of course, they're incredible, but VR headsets are capable of so much more than just that. And let me just give you a quick example. I recently sat down and played Triangle Strategy, a game that I've wanted to play on flat screen for a long time, but I actually played it on Quest. And yeah, Square Enix brought it to VR and made some changes, and it's amazing. It's still the same game, but in VR, it's more immersive, more enjoyable in my opinion, and going back and forth between the two, I can say, at least for me, this is the best version of Triangle Strategy. Now, imagine if Valve got developers to do exactly this at scale. Take existing games like your favorite third-person RPG or strategy game or platformer and officially add even a basic stereoscopic VR mode with some flair. It's exactly what VR Injector mods already do, but imagine on a larger scale and it being officially from the developers, so you don't have to mod things. Suddenly, Deckard isn't just for hardcore VR enthusiasts, it's for legitimately everyone. People get to play the games that they already know and love, but on a giant virtual screen, and if the developers do the work, adapt it to be the best version of itself. But the genius part is that on top of that, the Deckard is still capable of being a full-on VR headset for all those fully immersive titles. And so it's not only better than a monitor, but it's capable of doing more than a monitor could ever do. And it could potentially bring a lot of people directly into PC VR. And to me, as long as this is the outline, it's a massively winning formula. Valve doesn't need to beat Meta or Apple at their own game because this is their game. And all that Valve needs to do is do what they do best, and that's make PC gaming better. And I think the Deckard might just be the key to unlocking that for VR. Which brings us to the end of 2024. This year has been absolutely insane. And I don't mean the YouTube title clickbait of insane, but legitimately and genuinely, this year has been overwhelmingly insane. AI, layoffs, deepfakes, lies, wars, just craziness. And it's also not exactly been the best year for VR, at least conventionally. In many ways, it's been the most important year yet, but it's also been in a bit of a crisis mode. According to a pretty big recent analyst, headset sales have dropped 10% year over year. Active VR headsets and users are down 8 to 14%. The Vision Pro has failed to deliver on expectations. Meanwhile, Quest 3S sales haven't shown the numbers that analysts were expecting. And I'm sure you've noticed it's been the most popular grift recently to point at Vision Pro and shout that VR is dead again. Yet, despite all of that, VR is still here. Apple has entered the game. Google has made its move. Meta is holding its line, and Valve is cooking. And I think this year was an inflection point, not just for the industry, but also for me as a creator. And I'm gonna be real, a part of me wishes we could just put some of these things back in Pandora's box. But we can't. This technology is here. The investments have been made, and it's only going to get better and better, and things are only going to keep changing and getting weirder. And so, amidst all the craziness, really want to thank you all for being here and for watching all my videos throughout 2024. I know there haven't been many of them, but I think I've finally just accepted that it's only going to get weirder. And I hope you have an amazing rest of your week, and that your Christmas and New Year are equally amazing. Go spend some time with some family, give them a hug. And I cannot wait to see you guys in 2025. And for old time's sake, don't forget to like this video if you loved it, subscribe if you want more of this, and hit that freaking bell if you just can't live without it. Much love, everybody. Thrill out.